Hi, welcome to A Word to Wives. This is Donna, and I am excited to continue to share with you on the topic of acceptance as it relates to our husbands. Now, just want to let you know that I am going to be reading from and referring to my notes from time to time. That just kind of helps me to stay on track a little bit better. Anyway, in part one, I gave you the first two insights, and number one is to accept him for who he is, and number two is to accept him as a gift from God. So let's jump right into that third insight, which is to accept the fact that he is a man. Now, that might sound like stating the obvious, but is it really? You know, men and women can think, feel, respond to life, and even communicate very, very differently. And these differences can be kind of annoying to us. They can be irritating, especially when our husbands don't always respond the way we would like for them to. Well, let me give you an illustration. Suppose you and your husband was traveling to an event. And when you arrived, you found that the airline had lost a piece of your luggage with the dress you had planned to wear, along with your brand new pair of designer heels. Now, of course, you would be very upset. You would be, thinking, I can't believe they lost my luggage like that. You would be distraught. Now, your husband's perspective might be, hey, let's just find a mall, get another dress and some shoes. What's the big deal? To him, that's the solution to the problem. But for you, you might not be looking for a solution. You might not want a fix. What you want is for him to empathize. What you want is for him to see what a disaster this situation is. Now, if you were to call your friend, chances are she would respond very differently. She might say, like, oh, girl, I cannot believe they lost your luggage. With your brand new shoes, it took you forever to find those shoes, and they look so cute on you. I cannot believe that happened. Your girlfriend will respond in a way that shows you that she understood where you were coming from, that she felt your pain. Now, the way your husband responded might seem a little insensitive or a little uncaring, but that's not necessarily the case. As I understand it, men find it very difficult to be presented with a problem and not give a solution. I will never forget the time Raymond and I was leading a couples Bible study. And this very topic came up. And so the women were sharing with the husbands that, when we have a problem that we're discussing with you, we don't always want you to give us a solution. We don't always want to fix. Sometimes we just want you to listen. Sometimes we just want to vent. Sometimes we just want you to hear us. And, after that, something really interesting happened. Okay, the men got very quiet. A few of them kind of scratched their heads a little bit and looked around. And so Raymond asked the men a question. Raise your hand if you understood that. And not one of those men raised their hands. They didn't get it. I mean, they could not fathom being asked a question and not, wanting a solution. That just did not compute for them. It really didn't. So, that was a really humorous but eye opening thing for me, and it really helped me to understand how men and women can be so different. And so now when I discuss something with my husband that's a problem, if I don't want a solution or fix, I'll tell him, honey, I just need you to listen, okay? And it's not easy, but he'll try very hard to just listen. When it comes to communication, also, men and women tend to have very different communication styles, okay? Men tend to be more bottom line oriented. Men typically want just the facts, okay? They want that shortest route in communicating. Whereas with women, we tend to be a little wordier. We want to enjoy the ride. We're more share our feelings type communicators. Now, these are generalizations. They are not true of every single man or every single woman. There are couples where this could be just the opposite, where they might be flip flopped. There are situations where a couple might have, a similar communication style. That doesn't happen often, but, it could be the case. But for the most part, we are different. I absolutely love to read. I am an avid reader and I have been since I was a little girl. But I remember early in our marriage, if Raymond saw me engrossed in a book, he would ask me, so what's your book about? And me, thinking he really wanted to know what the book was about, would give him a dissertation on the book. I mean, I would tell him about the characters and who said what and who did what. And after, this happened a few times, I kind of realized, this brother, he's just kind of mentally checking out on me, and I came to realize that when he asked that question, he didn't want a full book report with footnotes. He just wanted a simple, answer to the question. Maybe you've seen your husband's eyes glaze over when you start telling him a long story with a lot of detail to it. Or if maybe you've told him something only to find later that it seems as though he didn't hear a word that you said. Well, it's not necessarily that he wasn't listening or that he was ignoring you, but sometimes when there's just a lot of detail, it's hard for them to follow because, see, he's wanting you to land the plane. And we might be just, enjoying that ride in the communication. Men typically are compartmentalized in the way they think. That means that they tend to focus on just one thing at a time, one compartment at a time. Whereas women, we tend to be more holistic. That means that we could focus on a lot of different things at one time. And that with us, there tends to be an interconnectedness. Things can be very connected with us. And so that's just a difference between the two of us, between men and women. And we need to understand that difference doesn't mean good or bad. It doesn't mean right or wrong. It doesn't mean that there's deficiencies in either of us. And we have to learn to accept, appreciate, and even celebrate the differences between us and be willing to make adjustments, be willing to accept and honor each other. I remember hearing a story about this elementary school principal, and it's actually kind of humorous to me. But he said his window faced the school playground. And while he would, watch the children play, he learned some really interesting observations about the differences between boys and girls. So he said when he watched the little boys playing, if one of them, fell down and got hurt, he said they would just leave the little boy on the ground and the game would go on. I mean, they would just keep it moving as if nothing at all happened. He said, but when the little girls were playing, if one of them got injured, the game would come to a complete stop. And all the little girls would run over to their little friend and they would, huddle around her and make sure that she is okay. Now some people might say that, that's just due to, socialization between boys and girls. And, I don't know if that's true or not. But I bet you this, if you were to ask any parent who has raised a son and a daughter, they would tell you that there are differences between boys and girls. And these differences become apparent very early on in life, sometimes even before there has been any opportunity to socialize them. But our culture wants to kind of blur the lines between men and women. There seems to be a resistance to gender distinctions as though these distinctions are bad or negative. But they're not. They are part of God's plan. He designed us to be different. Genesis 5:2 says, male and female, he created them and he blessed them. We are both created in the image of God. In terms of our value in the eyes of God, our worth and our value is the same. We are equal, yet He has created us to be distinctly different, and that's a good thing. It's like that old quote by Larry Dixon that says, if two people are exactly the same, one of them would be unnecessary. And that's true. If we're exactly the same, one of us would not be necessary. So it's okay that our husbands don't always think and feel and respond to the situations of life like we do. I'm thankful that my husband is different. So let's be accepting of those differences and let's allow our men to be the men that God designed them to be. Well, I want to make right now an important point of clarification, okay? In being accepting of your husband, I'm not saying to be accepting of any toxic, sinful, or harmful behaviors. If you are dealing with a husband who is has addiction issues, if he is abusive, if he is unfaithful, if he is dishonest, if he refuses to provide for or take care of his family, if he has, mental health issues that he has not addressed, in that case, that anything that is detrimental to the family, that is not something that you need to be accepting of. In that case, I would encourage you to diligently pray and seek spiritual counseling to help the both of you to appropriately deal with those types of issues. Okay. I want to be completely clear. Anything that is hurtful, anything that is detrimental, damaging to the family, that is not something to be accepting of. Okay. What I'm speaking of here is to accept your husband for the man that he is in terms of the way that God has designed him. Accept how he's wired, accept how he's gifted, accept his personality, his temperament, without judging him, without scrutinizing him, without focusing on his weaknesses or expecting him to meet your expectations. It's choosing to love him, not comparing him to anybody else. Because again, remember, he's the man that you chose. He's the man that you agreed to marry. So give him the gift of graciously appreciating and accepting him for who he is. I want you to listen to this quote. It says, acceptance is the ability to see that others have a right to be their own unique persons. That means having a right to their own feelings, thoughts, and opinions. When you accept people for who they are, you let go of your desire to change them. And I love that. I think that's an awesome quote. Well, in closing, I do want to leave you with an action point that I really hope that you will follow through with. And this is what I want to encourage you to do. I want you to write out 10 things that you appreciate about your husband. Okay, 10 things that you appreciate about him. And it could be anything. It could be a characteristic. It could be a personality trait. It could be something physical. Whatever it is, that you appreciate about him, I want you to write it down. Now, if you can't do 10 things, I want you to do five. If you can't do five, do two, or any number in between. And surely you could find at least two things that you appreciate. So I want you to do that, and then I want you to read that list to him. But before you do, I want you to pray. And I want you to ask God to help you to have no expectations, to just do this in love and do it because it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. And particularly if you're in a hard place in your marriage, it's something that could kind of help bridge that gap between the two of you and maybe start you on a different path. A good perspective that I think that's good to adopt is to tell your husband what you appreciate about him and to tell God about those areas where he genuinely needs to change or grow. Again, the three insights: accept him for the man that he is without trying to change him, accept him as a gift from God, designed especially for you, and then accept the fact that he is a man. And that makes us different, and that those differences are okay. Well, this is a word to wives. I truly hope that these insights have been of help to you. I ask that you would comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time where I would love to share more insights. Thank you. Bye.